Welcome to this place. Can you silence your cell phones, please? We're here to remember Anne Wendy Gardner, to celebrate her life and everything she loved. Some of you have joined us online, and still others will be watching this service at another time. And we are very grateful for the technology that allows all of you at home to participate in this service. And to everyone who is here, welcome to this place. Shortly after Anne realized she wasn't going to get over this last illness, she told me, "Joanne, I don't have a family, but I still want a service," which just floored me, because who on earth would think that she wouldn't have a service? And I said, "Anne, you don't have a family, but you have a family, a huge family." But still, Anne being Anne, she was adamant about a few things. First of all, she said, bright colors, I want it to be a celebration. She chose most of the music you'll hear today. She did not want her picture on the screen. Now, Mike and I spent quite a few, little conversations saying, "But Anne, it's not actually about you. It's about all the people who are going to be here." But she was adamant. So that was the one thing Mike and I agreed. We would not have any pictures on the screen. "I don't want my face up on that screen," is how she said. She wants this to be a celebration of her life. Now, some of you asked, how come there's no guest book? And again, because she doesn't have an immediate family, it's one of those things, But what we do have are on the tables in Hospitality Hall little pieces of paper called sending hugs. And so if you just fill out, memories or hugs of Anne, and then we can just all go around and read them, because we are her family, and that is the guest book. So thank you. I've gotten to know Anne quite well over the past 7 years. I've been serving McDougall. She was one of those members of this community that really exemplified hospitality. Anne had Dave, my husband, and I over for dinner many times to her house. And during COVID, we would be recording services here on Saturday afternoon. And she would say, "I've made dinner for you, just come pick it up." And so I would drop by her house, and there'd be like a 4 or 5 course meal that usually lasted us several days. And we dropped by, pet little Tosh, picked up a meal, and went on our way. I remember she sat right over here all the time in church, and I would see her face of joy or puzzlement sometimes, or she would cry. She always was mad when she was crying, and I would tell her, "This is the place for it." So you too, this is the place for it. If you can't cry in church, where can you cry? I know there are many at McDougall who were privileged to have Anne in their lives, and many of us are struggling with her passing. And as much as we at McDougall miss her, I know that for each of you, there is an Anne story as well. Mike and I were talking about how she seemed to have so many circles of influence. Her education colleagues, her knitting circle, her baking buddies, her traveling companions, her lifelong friends. And I'm sure there's many more. And shared her stories amongst all these groups in many ways. Even if I've never met you, I feel like I've known you for years, or at least about you, because she shared her life and her friendships so easily. This celebration of Anne's life is really putting together pieces that we've all kind of held separately to remember the beautiful mosaic that Anne created with her life. Her illness and death were a shock to all of us. There's no silver lining here to her death. As Anne said to me as she was processing the news that this would be it, "I don't want to die, Joanne. I have hopes and dreams and things I want to do." But she was also at peace about it. And her way of dealing with it was to make sure everything was in order, that nothing was left up in the air, even this service. She updated her will. She found a forever home for her beloved Tosh. She began giving things away. And when she moved to the hospice, all was in place. And I told her, now you should just let it all go. And it's all about you. And so she tried, although she could never quite give up being polite things. She wanted to make sure that Pam and I had officially met, not just met in the hallway. She said, Pam, this is important to me. So we officially met, didn't we, Pam? And when she knew I was in Okotoks for meetings, just perchance, when she was in the hospice in her last days, she actually invited me to stay at the hospice with her. That was Anne, to the end. Her last days. Oh, you could stay here. I don't think so. So here we are. Her family. Grieving the loss of a woman who just a few months ago was so alive. Still wondering what went wrong, and yet celebrating who she was and what she meant to us. So may this time together bring us into remembrance of our Anne and move us forward to a place of peace. This is a blessing by John O'Donohue that I'm going to open with. On the day when the weight deadens on your shoulders and you stumble, may the clay dance to balance you. And when your eyes freeze behind the gray window and the ghost of loss gets into you, may a flock of colors, indigo, red, green, and azure blue, come to awaken in you a meadow of delight. And when the canvas frays and the currach of thought and a stain of ocean blackens beneath you, may there come across the waters a path of yellow moonlight to bring you safely home. May the nourishment of the earth be yours. May the clarity of the light be yours. May the fluency of the ocean be yours. May the protection of the ancestors be yours. And so may a slow wind work these words of love around you, an invisible cloak to mind your life. And I just imagine Anne speaking these words to all of us as we remember. The first song that we're going to sing together just made me think of Anne so much because she was always there in times that were tough. It's Bridge Over Troubled Water. Y'all know the words, I'm sure, but they're also in the bulletin. And I'm going to invite you just to stand, and we're going to sing it together. When you're weary, feeling small, when tears are in your eyes, I will dry them all. I'm on your side, oh, when times get rough.
going out, and you're on the street when evening falls so hard, I will comfort you. I'll take your part when darkness comes and pain is all around, like a bridge over troubled water. I will lay me down like a bridge over troubled water. I will lay me down. Sail on, silver girl, sail on by. Your time has come to shine. All your dreams are on their way. See how they shine. Oh, if you need a friend, I'm sailing right behind, like a bridge over troubled water. I will ease your mind, like a bridge over troubled water. I will ease your Please be seated.
Anne asked two people to just say a few words and give a tribute. So we welcome first Jeff Parker.
Anne Gardner was a somber, quiet, serious person who... Oh, sorry, wrong speech. That's for a lesson on irony I'm doing next week. Sorry. Here we are. Good afternoon, family and friends of Anne. I'm humbled in a gathering of so many people so close to Anne to be asked to pay tribute to her. Actually, I'm pretty sure she asked me as a thank you for all the help I gave her back in high school on her English essays. Although I don't think I did a very good job if the quality of spelling and punctuation in her text messages were any indication. Wendy and I got a text from her last spring that I'm pretty sure was sent using the Enigma encoder. I'd like to acknowledge, first of all the staff at Foothills Country Hospice who looked after Anne so compassionately in her final days, as well as the group of friends who devoted so much loving care to Anne at the hospice and who kept us all up to date on the Caring Bridge website. You have our deepest gratitude. I met Anne in the spring of 1978 in Calgary. It may have been on the number 3 bus which we would both take to and from Dr. E.P. Scarlett High School. We recognized each other from biology class, and so we started up a little chat. Guessing right away that she had a sense of humor, good guess, I told her that my father was the owner of the Parker Pen Company. Well, she believed that for a few seconds, and then I'm sure started plotting ways to get back of me, and that continued for the rest of our relationship together. And that little bit of fun set the tone for 4 decades of friendship. Now, plenty of people are fun-loving, but you may not maintain a great friendship with them because of other shortcomings that they have. But even though Anne was short in stature and typically led the way with the short jokes, she was not short on the key qualities that we all want in a friend: trustworthiness, compassion, empathy, loyalty. Now, in a few minutes, Dana, a soulmate of Anne's, will be up here, and she's going to provide some of Anne's personal story and family background in her tribute. What I'd like to focus on are Anne's sense of adventure and her uncanny ability to make people feel special. While I wouldn't say that Anne was a fearless person, she did have an impressive record of trying new things that meant going outside her comfort level. She did this professionally by constantly being a pioneer and advocate for people with disabilities, especially for their inclusion in the mainstream. In fact, several years ago, she was a chair of an important conference on diversity and inclusion called Brave Spaces that was held right here at McDougall. By way of personal learning and growth, she even undertook a solo, introspective spiritual retreat to the Isle of Iona in Scotland, which was a deeply significant experience for her. She was adventurous in her personal interests, taking on many challenges such as golfing, cross-country skiing, fitness, soccer, and one of her proudest accomplishments, hiking the very demanding West Coast Trail. As we all know, Anne was a daring cook and was always looking for a new recipe and the opportunity to try it out at one of her regular dinner parties, which was one of her favorite ways of connecting with her many friends. Speaking of recipes, little time out here. I know that Wendy and I are not the only ones here who are very curious as to the holder of 2 well-guarded gastronomical gems: the Scottish shortbread recipe and the secrets behind the famous mushroom burgers. So we will pay for those if anybody is holding those rights. Seriously, we will. And I can just picture, remember Anne would always say when making the shortbread that she'd have to sit down on the kitchen floor and work it with her hands, just like Granny taught her how to. So just an amazing story. I love that. And of course also had a great sense of adventure when it came to travel. Newfoundland, Fernie, Lake Louise, Stratford, New Orleans, Laguna, New York, Palm Desert, New Zealand, the UK, Australia, Greece, Germany, France, Italy. And I know that many of you are smiling because you've shared those places with her as hosts or companions, or you've heard her rave about them. When Anne suggested to us that we go with her to Scotland this past summer for the 150th playing of the Open, Wendy and I were actually a little uncertain. We had a wedding to plan for our eldest son, Ben. We both had retirement gigs where time off was at a premium. We were worried about the viability of travel given the inconveniences and headaches caused by COVID. Yet, Anne was so excited by the prospect of planning and going on this trip that it was contagious. So, of course, we went. And we heard her say so many times, "You guys, we did it. We're in Scotland and we're going to St. Andrews." Was that an okay, Anne? Was that good? Okay. Seeing her joy at being there confirmed that we had made the right choice, and seeing Scotland through Anne's eyes was truly wonderful. She got quite emotional when we were on the Isle of Iona, and she told us about her visit there with Sheila years earlier and how she returned after Sheila's passing to spread her ashes there. And she was literally in tears when we stepped onto the old course at St. Andrews. What a blessing to share this with her. And we know that Granny, Ted, Sheila, and Barry would be so happy that Anne made this heavenly journey. Clearly, Anne had a huge heart, filled with warmth and kindness and fun and laughter, and it brought her great joy to open up that heart to others. Many people have big hearts. So what made Anne stand out as a friend to so many? In my wife's words, Anne had the ability to make you feel like you were the only one in the room. And it's true. She had ways of making you feel valued, important, loved. Sometimes she did this with a compliment, a disarming smile, a twinkle in her eye. Wendy and I witnessed this several times on our trip to Scotland, where we'd be desperate for help with delayed flights or uncertain connections, and suddenly Anne would have a highly stressed, overtired airline representative smiling and feeling like they just won Employee of the Month. She would make them feel appreciated, like they were the only ones good enough to solve our particular problem. And let me tell you, when one such appreciative employee got us bumped to first class, Wendy and I were in awe of Anne's magic. And I know many of you have experienced it as well. How many times did you hear Anne say things like, "I remember that you like these ginger snaps, so I brought you some." Or, "I know you really like this band, and I thought you'd like to see this new video they posted." Or, "I just finished this book, and I thought you'd like to read it." Anne was very big on traditions as a way of strengthening her connections with people and making them feel special. So I invite you to think of some of the traditions that Anne shared with you and possibly your family. I recall when our boys, Ben and Riley, were young, Anne would bring Ziploc bags of frozen grapes for them whenever she would come to visit. She also made the habit of jumping on the boys' beds early in the morning to wake them up. Every summer for years, we would stay at Anne's house the night before Stampede Parade, then get up early to go and watch our boys marching with their show bands. And every year, Anne would have the same wonderful cheeses and fruits and buns, and of course, some very special coffee. And when we were all young enough to stay up past 10 o'clock, we would play cards. And Anne would bring this tacky plastic piggy bank that I'm pretty sure she stole from somewhere. And in it was all of her poker money and a handwritten list that Wendy had made for her years and years and years ago of the order of the poker hands. Well, a few weeks ago when we came to visit Anne, she gave us that pig. And we're going to cherish that. And the little note is still intact. It's still in there. And we'll think of her every time we put it out on the card table. So yes, we're all going to miss Anne's amazing, kind gestures and traditions. But I think it'll be easy for us to find ways to keep her spirit flowing. There's nothing that Anne would appreciate more than knowing that while we miss her intensely, we're keeping her warmth, kindness, and energy alive. Anne, you blessed us with your kindness, and you enriched all of our lives. We love you.
Thanks, Jeff. He mentioned Iona in Scotland, which is a spiritual retreat center. Erin, her friend Erin, sent me a note and said that the Isle of Iona was special to Anne. It was her thin place. People have been making pilgrimages there for 1,500 years. I have a rock on my desk that Anne brought me from Iona, actually, and she gave me a necklace, actually, and just recently at her house when I came to visit. She said, "Oh, here, this is for you." And I said, "Anne, are you divesting of all your things?" Little things, she said. So I have a necklace from Iona. It meant a lot to her. Here are some words about Iona. Is this place really nearer to God? Is the wall thin between our whispers and his listening? I only know the world grows less and less. Here, what matters is conquering the wind, coming home dry-shod, getting the fire lit. I'm not sure whether there is no time here or more time, whether the light is stronger or just easier to see. That is why I keep returning thirsty to this place that is older than my understanding and younger than my broken spirit. And as Iona is to Scotland, so are mountains to us here, and Anne's resting place will be in Fernie, surrounded by the beauty of our land. I'm right about that, aren't I? Yes. Okay. Just making sure. She said that to me, and then they had that look on their face, the Fernie friends. Fernie? She's coming to Fernie? And I'm like, oh no. That was another thing. She insisted she was not having ashes here. No ashes. So anyway. Anne was thinking about music all the time. Sometimes I would start singing a sort of hymn-like thing, and she would stop me midstream and said, try this one. And this is the one that she requested for her mom. She said Sheila would like it. This is Go Rest High on That Mountain. I know your life on earth was trouble, and only you could know the pain. You weren't afraid to face the devil. You're no stranger to the rain. Go rest high on that mountain. Son, your work on earth is done. Go to heaven shouting, love for the Father and the Son. Oh, how we cried the day you left us. We gathered around your grave to grieve. Wish I could see the angels' faces when they hear your sweet voice sing. Go rest high on that mountain. Son, your work on earth is done. Go to heaven shouting, love for the Father and the Son. Go to heaven shouting, love for the Father and the Son. There's a poem in the basement in Anne's house, I think it is, that Ruth Dunsire is going to read.
It is so heartwarming to look out and see of all of you and special family gathered here together this afternoon. Thursday mornings have always been special at our house. Anne would arrive at our front door, balancing Tim Hortons coffee in one hand and her delicious homemade muffins in the other hand, ready with her wonderful hugs, her million-dollar smiles, and ready for good conversation. Dawn and I enjoyed many happy visits also with Anne's wee Scottish mum, Sheila. We called Sheila and Anne the dynamic duo, and they were. I was honored to participate in Sheila's celebration of life service several years ago. And I feel doubly honored that Anne asked me to share the following verse with you. I know that the words may be as meaningful to you as they are to me. I think it was on Anne's bedroom wall. Joanne. What made us friends in the long ago when first we met? Well, I think I know. The best in me and the best in you hailed each other because they knew that always and always, since life began, our being friends was part of God's plan. Thank you, Anne. I will cherish our friendship forever and love you always.
I have to start by showing you something. A few of us have been going through Anne's things, which is, as most of you know, not a daunting task at the best of times. But when four people are doing it who don't know each other that well, there would be this cry from the bedroom, "Who needs 60 pairs of shoes?" And what the heck is that, is what I heard. This is a CGIT MIDI. Also to be used as a Halloween costume as a sailor, or wherever else Anne could wear it. I'm Dana, and it's wonderful to be here back to my home church. This is where I was raised, and I have very, very strong roots here as me myself, let alone what Anne and I had the opportunity to do together here. I met Anne in 1976 through CGIT, called Canadian Girls in Training, or affectionately known by the boys as Canadian Girls in Training Bras. We didn't really like each other at first. We were very different in our approaches to the world, and we weren't sure about how that difference could possibly be managed. For the next couple of years, we navigated a simple tolerance that blossomed into a forever friendship that meant the world to me. I was fortunate to spend time with Anne and her mom and dad and brother in a little house in the district of Southwood. It was a household filled with laughter and lots of practical jokes. Her brother Barry was a fun and handsome guy, and I might have had a teeny crush on him. Her mom was a constant, steadfast presence, and her dad especially liked to tease me about eating blue cheese and lemon butter sandwiches. The Gardner dog was named Buffer, who was a sweet and affectionate little guy, and heard many stories from Anne and her friends about life, boys, and philosophical things only dogs can hear. In those early days, I was told about family members in Calgary and beyond, cousins, aunts and uncles, both on the Gardner and the Wishart side, and got to know a little bit about kilts and all things Scottish. Thank you, Dave, for piping before the service. Anne would have loved it. I learned that Anne was born in Edmonton, but really only lived in Calgary. I learned about the love she had for her amazing granny and watched family and friends come together for the very big granny birthday celebration. I noticed that the Gardner family was invested in their neighborhood and that they integrated friendliness into each interaction with another human. I was there when her dad died, while we were in early university and watched how that profoundly affected Anne and her mom. Many of us will be forever grateful to have known the duo known as the Gardner girls, Anne and Sheila, and the love they had for people. In her last week of life, Anne talked with me about watching for butterflies because it meant her mom was around. She was thrilled to know that I had spent a day fly fishing on the bow with a guide as it connected me to her dad. Throughout the years, we grew from teenagers to young women to middle-aged women and finally to, let's call it, wise women. We have navigated relationships with friends, co-workers, bosses, neighbors, partners, and children. We moved from being ever so sure about our philosophies about spirituality to recognizing that life actually had very few for sures. We compared recipes, approaches to dealing with those with special needs, politics, theater, world issues, and gardening tips. I don't think there's been very many periods in my life where we haven't talked weekly. In 1979, I took my first job away from home in Naramata, BC. It's a United Church retreat center where I was to be gone for the whole summer. I was scared, lonely, and very unsure about how this communal boys and girls bathroom and housing was going to work. One Sunday afternoon, when I was especially homesick, I heard a familiar voice. As this was before cell phones, much before cell phones, there would have been no way to predict a visit from some dear friends. There she was, my Anne, and some buddies from home. We have laughed about this surprise for the rest of our lives. I was so darn grateful to her for knowing what I needed most. Even when she was in the hospice, this situation came up, as it truly, for me, was what defined Anne. She always showed up. Anne showed up. Isn't that what we all know about her? A friend of Anne's told me that she learned how to advocate for the underdog because of Anne. Yep, she showed up for them. It takes some getting used to, this showing up. At a recent event at the theater with Anne, the person behind could not seem to stop eating licorice candy, one noisy wrapper at a time. I was mortified, but also a bit grateful that Anne's reminder to the candy eaters that they were being a tad rude allowed for a more uninterrupted theater experience. In a golf tournament we were in together recently, Anne used a tee throughout the whole game. On the tee box, on the fairway, stopping just short of using one on the green. One little look from our teammates had Anne expounding the importance of beginners getting a chance to feel successful too. Anne showed up. At a bookstore in Laguna Beach one time, Anne heard a staff member tell me that she was really glad I could experience some warmth as Canada was so cold. Anne showed up. That staff member will never again be confused about the weather and seasons we have in Canada. After the flood of 2013, High River was a mess. Families had no homes, no supplies, and no food. Anne showed up. She hosted one of her famous dinner parties and asked people not to bring wine or appetizers or dessert this time, but supplies for Dana's people. Needed a committee member for a specific purpose near and dear to her heart? Anne showed up. Had an idea about something you think will make a difference in someone's life? You asked Anne. She'd show up. Know a young person with developmental challenges who needed continued exposure to an educational experience? Anne showed up. I remember being in an airport trying to sort out something that had gone wrong with the flight plan. With a line of what felt like 100 people behind us, Anne decided to ask for the manager's name of the young woman who had been helping us. I could almost feel the eyes boring into the back of our heads for the delay that was about to occur. Stammering, "Are you frustrated with me, man?" Anne showed up. She politely looked at the young woman and said, "Oh, not at all, dear. I want to tell your manager how amazing you are." Travel partner, camping buddy, hiking friend, Anne showed up. Feeling the pressure of life, going through a rough time, Anne showed up. I will be forever grateful for the couple of times she deemed the day Dana Day, after making sure my family and work was taken care of through conversations with my workmates and husband. A place was decided, a splendid picnic was produced, and the day was spent enjoying the mountains, the sunlight, and simply breathing together. When my daughter found out that Anne had passed, she said, "Oh, Mom, it finally hit me today. Every birthday, she sang happy birthday to me on the phone or left it by voicemail. I will always miss that. Anne showed up. Her memory and response to other people's special day was more than just admirable, it was ineffable, beyond words. After Barry died, Anne and I spent time together getting to know one of the agencies that had helped Barry. In this dark place for her, she showed up for the lovely staff and volunteers who had known Barry so well. She thanked them, she sent notes, she shared her grief. Throughout her mom's illness, she was a living testament to the importance she placed on feedback for a job well done. COVID has been a difficult time for all of us, but someone who lived for in-person relationships and contacts, for Anne, it was extremely difficult. She was lonely, worried, and had to pull out her best self, rely on her best friends, and use her best instincts to stay from cratering. We talked about her being like a sunflower, moving her face to sunny thoughts whenever possible. She knew she needed something else, something life-altering and wonderful. And Tosh showed up. The two of them began showing up together. Shits and giggles, they called themselves, and they adored each other. Every night she turned her sweet face to Tosh and said, "I love you, and I am so glad you came into my life." In the last weeks of Anne's life, she was concerned about making sure that everyone was okay. The friends who were able to visit were greeted by Anne in typical Anne fashion, always an expression of gratitude, a message of love, and a hope and reminder of whatever she felt that person needed to do or think about after she was gone. Anne watched her group of caretakers, Erin, Pam, Terry, Shalene, who came from Ontario, and I, get to know each other, and told me she loved thinking about the new friendships that were developing between us. She continued to explore her faith with Joanne. She handed out tasks and managed details with Mike about what would happen after she was no longer here. We watched people who loved Anne come and go from the hospital, home, and hospice, feeling overwhelmed with sadness and amazed that until her very last day, she was still our Anne, with all of her independence intact. Her very good friend Robin came from Australia to be with her in a very short stay at home. We all believed that this was the very best gift anyone could have given. She was able to spend time with Tosh, get some details ironed out, and have some important conversations. In every moment of her last leg of this very quick journey, we were all struck by the strength of Anne's character. She never stopped showing up. From an unknown author, I received this from a good friend who knew our Anne, and it sums her up. At the end of life, what really matters is not what we bought, but what we built. Not what we got, but what we shared. Not our competence, but our character, and not our success, but our significance. Live a life that matters. Live a life of love. From today forward, when Anne shows up, give her a nod. Take a moment to feel what she is saying to you. It will be important stuff.
Funny, in those last few days, Anne and I had quite a few conversations about faith and things, and she never cried. But she told me everybody who came to visit her was crying, and she knew that they needed that. And she wondered, I said, well, now all your stuff's done. Where are you at? And she just was at peace. She never wondered what was beyond. She was so wrapped up in life. So our scripture today is from Mark. Again, Jesus began to preach beside the lake, but such a huge crowd gathered around that he got into a boat and sat there while the crowd remained on shore. Jesus taught them many things in the form of parables. In the course of his teaching, said, "Listen carefully. Imagine a sower going out to sow, scattering the seed widely. Some of the seed fell on the edge of the path, and the birds came and ate it. Some seed fell on rocky ground where it found a little soil and sprang up immediately because the soil had little depth. But then when the sun came up and scorched it, it withered for a lack of roots. And some seed fell into thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked it, and it produced no crop. And some seed fell into rich soil and grew tall and strong, producing a crop 30, 60, even 100-fold. And Jesus ended by saying, if you have ears to hear, then listen. This scripture reading, which we call the parable of the sower, or some people call it the parable of the soil, isn't a usual reading at a celebration of life, and you might be wondering what it has to do with our remembrance of Anne. Probably could have read the love is patient, love is kind that you hear at every wedding you ever attend, and sometimes at celebrations of life. And that scripture is much more obviously on point, for she did know how to love. That's for sure. But we've been studying Mark in our services, and we've learned that this parable is the cornerstone of everything that Jesus taught about how we should live in the world. The sower spreads seeds indiscriminately, promiscuously, some say, and the seeds reach every single nook and cranny of the field, sometimes the path, and even beyond. And sometimes they land on good soil, and sometimes they're choked out, and this is inevitable when you plant seeds in shallow ground or amongst the rocks, when you're not careful about where the seeds are going to land. And still, the sower doesn't change their strategy, but rather continues to what they call broadcast seeding to all the spaces that can be reached. Seeds everywhere. And God is the sower, of course, and the seeds are the grains of God with us. God's realm, God's kingdom that are planted here on earth. I like to think of those seeds as little sparkles of God that are all around us. And if you're open to seeing them, they take root and they grow. But if the cares of the world or the things on your to-do list have captured you, those little glimmers of glory will be choked out and disappear. See, there's two realities before us. The world as it is, and the world as it could be. The world where self-interest, power, and glory rule, and a different order where peace and justice are fed by love. And the great gift, here's the turn, the great gift that Anne gave to us was she saw those seeds everywhere. She sensed the God sparkles all around, and she made it her life's work, really, to till the soil where they could take root. The realm of God to her was in this world, not in some unknown resting place after she died. She made that really clear to me in her final days. She wasn't concerned about what was beyond, although she knew angels would be welcoming her. She knew the realm of God is here among us. Her faith was grounded in nurturing those God sparkles, not preparing for an eternity beyond. So she set about planting seeds everywhere, everywhere. She started an extended education group for young adults with learning disabilities so that she could continue to learn in community with them and they with her. And her passion, as you've heard, was creating spaces that were integrated, where everyone belonged. Everyone has a place at the table. And she planned this conference, Brave Spaces, that promoted the idea that everyone has something to contribute to a community. All should be welcomed. They should participate fully and be honored. She cultivated friendships that were deep and meaningful. She did so many things out of love for these friends. So here's a little one of mine. Most of you don't know this, but Anne was in a short play we did here at the church one Christmas. It's not something she wanted to do or ever would do again, and I didn't know that. I just assumed, oh, Anne, she's just so alive and vibrant. She'll love doing this play. So she said yes, and then she told me how terrified she was. But she knew it would help me. And that's why she said yes. And I bet you all have stories of Anne saying yes, showing up, because she loved you. And she knew it would help. She loved to travel. It renewed her soul. The last two big things Anne did was go to St. Andrews in Scotland for the 150th anniversary, I think it is, of the golf tournament there. It seems like 150 years every time I see a golf tournament, but that's all beside the point. And she went to Fernie for a pilgrimage to the mountains. She knew that hospitality was a sacred practice. She entertained so often, and the food was always fabulous. And I, like Jeff, am on the hunt for the mushroom burgers. So if you have it, you could slip it to me and I'll never tell, and I'll guarantee you a place in heaven. That act of love is great. She told me that her mother said she couldn't share that recipe. That was the only one she couldn't share. So if you got it, it's like Carly Simon, who finally said told someone who you so vain was about. It's like that precious. This was the irony of stomach cancer. Because food was Anne's love language, and losing the ability to eat was one of the toughest things for me to watch. Even so, the last time I was at her house, she wanted me to have a cinnamon bun and some Diet Coke. And I said, Anne, you can't eat with me. That would be rude. Oh, no. You need to have this. It's here. And then she said, it doesn't bother me at all to watch people eat. Like, that's amazing to me. It bothers me now to watch people eat, if I can't have it. In the final days, we really saw how many seeds Anne had spread and cultivated, and how they were bearing fruit with all the visits and phone calls and texts and emails she received. I went to the hospital one day after church, and she told me she'd already had 8 visitors that day. And when Robbie came from Australia to visit and care for her in those 2 weeks before hospice, it was an act of love that was built on years of friendship. Her friends Pam and Dana and Aaron and Terry and Shalene, who were with her, I hope I didn't forget anyone, took turns at the hospice, and she wanted to make sure that I remembered all of them. She called them, they're my squad, and mentioned their names at the funeral. And then, this is true, I got a text at 11 o'clock at night from Terry, who said, she was on Anne's phone, she said, Anne said, don't forget to include Mike. You'll know what that means. Her squad plus Mike. I know many of you wished you could have seen her more at the end, but Anne had asked for privacy. And I actually think she wanted privacy for the other people in the hospice. That's the truth. She just didn't want so many people coming through and bothering all the other people. The last few days of Anne's life were really hard to watch. As fast as it went, those 3 days were an eternity. I went to see her on November 1st in the morning, and November 1st on the Christian calendar is All Saints' Day. And I remember seeing her and said, it's All Saints' Day today, Anne. She was largely unresponsive at that time. And there was just one moment of recognition in that visit, and she looked at me, and she said, oh, Joanne, I was hoping to see you. And that was it. And in my prayer for her that day, I always had a prayer. She said, how are you going to sum up my day today, Joanne, with the prayer? I reminded her of the great cloud of witnesses that surrounded her, of those seeds she had planted throughout her life, and the harvest of hope she had prepared in all of us. And so we invited the angels to carry her into what is to come, and we released her into God's care. I saw her one more time that night around 9 o'clock. I just happened to be in Okotoks for a meeting because there was a snowstorm blowing in earnest. And up until that time, I would sing her songs of her youth. Like I said, I'd start singing some, religious themed song, and she would stop me midstream for some reason. I was singing Joni Mitchell and Gordon Lightfoot, but I knew we were close because she hadn't actually been aware that I was there at all. And so that night I sang Amazing Grace because it just somehow felt right. And I said a prayer, had a conversation with Terry. We both thought she might make it another day, but I got a call from Mike around 6:30 the next morning that she was gone. And our grief, which we have all collectively held, but had kept in check from the day of her diagnosis, was unleashed. And I know I speak for many of you when I say that her death has been difficult for me. I remember thinking the next day I needed to go check the hospice to see if it was really true. Maybe Mike got it wrong. Maybe they called about the wrong Anne. I needed to go. Surely she was still alive. It seems impossible that she could be gone. But I returned to that parable. Anne is like the sower who spreads the seeds indiscriminately, and God sparkles everywhere and for everyone. And Anne lived in such a passionate, relentlessly graceful way that if we stop and look, we too can see those sparkles everywhere, and the world is a better place because we knew her. Amen. This was her request, This Is Me. This was a song we sang at Brave Spaces. It's really important to Anne.
I am not a stranger to the dark. Hide away, they say, 'cause we don't want your broken parts. I've learned to be ashamed of all my scars. Run away, they say, no one will love you as you are. But I won't let them break me down to dust. I know that there's a place for us, for we are glorious. When the sharpest words want to cut me down, I'm gonna send a flood, gonna drown them out. I am brave, I am bruised, I am who I'm meant to be. This is me. Look out, 'cause here I come. And marching on to the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be seen. I make no apologies. This is me. Oh, 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 and another round of bullets hits my skin. We'll fire away, 'cause today I won't let the shame sink in. We are bursting through the barricades, reaching for the sun. We are warriors, and that's what we've become. Won't let them break me down to dust. I know that there's a place for us, for we are glorious. Gonna send a flood, gonna drown the night. This is brave, this is bruised, this is who I'm meant to be. This is me. Look out, 'cause here I come. And I'm marching on to the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be seen. I make no apologies. This is me. Whenever the world's gonna cut me down, I'll send a flood and I'll drown them out. This is me.
I'm going to invite Aaron to come and share some prayers from Iona. So what we're going to do is sing a little Iona chant together, and she's going to read a prayer, and then we will sing the chant again. It's called Kindle a Flame. I'll teach it to you.
Prayer of awareness. Light within all light, soul behind all souls, at the breaking of dawn, at the coming of day, we wait and watch. Your light within the morning light, your soul within the human soul, your presence beckoning to us from the heart of life. In the dawning of this day, let us know fresh shinings in our soul. In the growing colors of new beginning all around us, let us know the first lights of our heart. Great star of the morning, inner flame of the universe, let us be a color in this new dawning.
We sing together.
Deep peace I breathe into you. O weariness, here. O ache, here. Deep peace, a soft white dove to you. Deep peace, a quiet rain to you. Deep peace, an ebbing wave to you. Deep peace, red wind of the east from you. Deep peace, gray wind of the west to you. Deep peace, dark wind of the north from you. Deep peace, blue wind of the south to you. Deep peace, pure red of the flame to you. Deep peace, pure white of the moon to you. Deep peace, pure green of the grass to you. Deep peace, pure brown of the earth to you. Deep peace, pure gray of the dew to you. Deep peace, pure pure blue of the sky to you. Deep peace of the running wave to you. Deep peace of the flowing air to you. Deep peace of the quiet earth to you. Deep peace of the sleeping stones to you. Peace, peace.
So we join together in that prayer of the Christian community. The words are in the bulletin. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Receive Anne Wendy Gardner into your loving arms. Embrace her with eternal love. And may the light that is from the beginning to the end shine on her. Lead us into light without Anne. Yet knowing her light is always within us. Help us to love and serve you in this world, and in the end, welcome us into your eternal joy. I want you to stand. We're going to have a blessing, and then we're all going to sing. And she insisted, loudly and celebratory, Spirit in the Sky, okay? So get prepared for that. Here is the blessing of Peter Miller from the Iona community. May the angels of light glisten for us this day. May the sparks of God's beauty dance in the eyes of those we love. May the universe be on fire with presence for us this day. May the new sun's rising grace us with gratitude. Let earth's greenness shine and its waters breathe with spirit. Let heaven's winds stir the soil of our soul and fresh awakenings rise within us. May the mighty angels of light glisten in all things this day, and may they summon us to reverence. May they call us to life. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, Mother of us all. Going up to the Spirit in the sky.
When I die and they lay me to rest, gonna go to the place that's the best. When I lay me down to die, going up to the Spirit in the sky. Going up to the Spirit in the sky. That's when I wanna go when I die. When I die and they lay me to rest, I'm gonna go to a place that's the best. Prepare yourself, you know it's a must. Gotta have a friend in Jesus. So you know that when you die, he's gonna recommend you to the Spirit in the sky. He'll recommend you to the Spirit in the sky. That's where I'm gonna go when I die. When you die and they lay you to rest, you're gonna go to a place that's the best.
Okay, I sort of feel like we've been half-hearted up to this point. And Anne would not like that. I know she would have left left already because this is far too long for her. But we are still here. And we're going to show up and we're going to sing Spirit in the Sky with everything we got, okay? Here we go, one more time. I've never been a sinner, I never sinned. I got a friend in Jesus. And you know that when I die, He's gonna set me up with the Spirit in the sky.